It was only expected to last 6 weeks. Yet this coming Monday marks 50 years of Newsround, and current viewing figures are soaring, proving that children should never be underestimated. And neither should a newscaster in a chunky jumper. No one is more proud of Newsround reaching this landmark anniversary than its founding father John Craven, the man who first brought knitwear into the newsroom. Who would have believed this little experiment in news for children, the first in the world, would still be going strong after half a century? Certainly not me, says the 81-year-old of the show he calls my baby. Some 33 years after his last broadcast, John says Newsround's role is more vital than ever. Children have access to so much false news and bad influences on social media, he says. We can be assured that Newsround will always tell them the truth. Throughout its 5 decades, the Current Affairs program has informed and inspired children. It also launched the careers of major broadcasters including Krishna Guru Murphy, Juliet Chingham, Oro Duba, Helen Skelton, and Adam Fleming. ITV News at 10 presenter Julie, who fronted Newsround from 1994 to 1997, was an early viewer. She remembers watching John Craven on an old TV set and beckoning her mum over to the sofa when the distinctive Glockenspiel theme tune started. I thought it was a normal news bulletin. I didn't get that it was aimed at children because back then it had a formal set that looked like the normal news, she laughs. From the start, the program treated children as the equals of grown-ups. It tailored the news so brilliantly for children that you were never patronized, Julie says. Stories were targeted at viewers aged between 6 and 12. The inaugural 1972 episode, lasting 8 minutes, led with a report on rare ospreys nesting in Scotland and segued into Vietnam War updates. All the research showed children hated the news, so it had to be done in a way that captured their attention, with lots of stories about wildlife, adventure and children around the world, as well as the big news of the day, John says. BBC South East presenter Ellie Kreisel, who spent 5 years on the show, agrees. We never followed the main news agenda slavishly, she says. We did the news that was important to children, be that bullying issues or school lunches. News heavyweights John Humphreys, Martin Bell and Michael Burke were happy to write commentaries and do pieces to camera specifically for Newsround, John says. I remember John Humphreys refusing to close down an expensive satellite link from China until he'd completed his Newsround story, and Martin Bell sending us a special report, beautifully crafted for our audience, on life for children caught in the middle of the Vietnam conflict. It was shown word for word on the evening news. One reason they were also helpful was, I suspect, because it was the only time their young children saw what their dads did for a living. Newsround was the optimal training ground for cub reporters, as Channel 4 news presenter Krishnan recalls. As well as the fun stuff of Newsround, we had a boss who said, "You want to cover the American elections? Yeah, fine, go. You want to go to Bosnia? Go. Tell those really big stories to children in a unique way." Krishnan was still at university when he joined Newsround in 1991. 1 year later he interviewed Tony Blair, then a young Labour MP, for a special mock election in which 1 million children cast votes. Newsround was one of the formative experiences of my life as a journalist, from interviewing Mikhail Gorbachev about the collapse of the Soviet Union, which he had agreed to do with Newsround rather than BBC News, to going on the road with Take That and meeting all their mums, he says. The show's scoops are legendary. It first reported the attempted assassination of Pope John Paul II in 1981, the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster in 1986 and the fire at Windsor Castle in 1992. Craven was editor when the American shuttle broke apart seconds after takeoff, killing all 7 astronauts on board. I stopped at a TV showroom at 5 o'clock to check the program was on air and, to my astonishment, saw Challenger exploding on 100 screens, he says. Our viewers were fascinated by space travel and, unlike much of the adult media, we had followed the build-up to the Challenger mission closely because there was a school teacher among the crew, taking projects from children into space. So this tragedy, which happened just minutes before Newsround went on air, was particularly poignant. Newsround's sensitive reporting continues today with the war in Ukraine. A recent report featured child refugees arriving in the Polish city of Krakow. We often talk about reassuring kids with honesty at Newsround, says editor Lewis James. Where there is hope and reassurance we can give kids, we will do that. We won't sugarcoat it or say everything's all right, but we will give information in a different way from normal news outlets. BBC Kyiv correspondent James Waterhouse, on our TV screens daily since the fighting started, recently answered children's questions on the crisis, and BBC security correspondent Frank Gardner regularly provides news explainers, answering common questions asked by viewers. You see a lot of explainer videos in news, but we did them 20 years ago, says BBC journalist Sonali Shah, who took over from Elie Kreisel in 2006. We didn't assume people had knowledge. It's why some adults watch. They would say, I don't get how they're covering it on the 6 p.m. news, so I watch you to understand what's happening with the economy right now, Sonali says. Krishnan believes Newsround was way ahead of the game on diversity, employing Lucy Methven as the BBC's first Asian female reporter in 1976, and on climate change too. We had worked out that kids cared about the planet, so our environmental coverage was ahead of the adult news by several years, he says. We spent a lot of time on environmental pollution, the ozone layer and CFCs. The tea time edition of Newsround was scrapped in 2020 after viewing figures fell to 24,000, but a new morning edition shown in classrooms has proven popular, with 2 million children watching at least once a week. Online viewing figures increased by 25% after Russia invaded Ukraine. We are very much relevant in kids' lives in our target demographic, says Lewis. There are plans for new 15-minute Newsround specials. They include a documentary provisionally titled Our Queen about Her Majesty's 70-year reign through a child's eyes. The famous press pack, in which young viewers report on the news, is also returning. Krishnan believes the show has a strong future. Newsround has always moved with the times and been ahead of the game if anything, so I have no doubt it will survive. And current presenter Hayley Hassel says viewers regularly write in with story ideas. She says she loves her job. I've swum with sharks, jumped out of a plane at 21,000 feet, and I've rescued 2 lions from France. But things do occasionally go wrong. Oruduba joined Newsround in 2008 and remembers video links failing to materialize. I had to speak slower and give more context to the story, he recalls. My heart was absolutely racing. When Iceland's volcano Eyjafjallajökull erupted in 2010 and engulfed Europe in a huge cloud of ash, Orr flew to Reykjavik. However, his luggage went to America. We arrived in Iceland with no clothes, so had to go to the Primark equivalent, he laughs. Iceland is very expensive. We spent hundreds of pounds on pants, socks and coats to make sure we didn't freeze to death. As for Julie, she slipped off her stool in her audition, so spent her first broadcast worrying about falling over. She didn't. Although she did fall in love. The first day I walked into that office I was told, "Oh, this is where your desk will be." I sat down facing this guy, television producer, Nick Gardner, who I ended up marrying, so it was a big week in my life professionally and personally, she says. Today, Newsround holds a special place in the hearts of everyone who works on it, especially the man who started it all. I got many chances to talk to our viewers and was always amazed at how much they recalled from our stories and how much they loved the show, John says. Even now, people come up to me and say, "Thank you for being part of my childhood and getting me interested in the news." My stint as a Newsround presenter, a man is talking in my ear. A woman gestures at my side. The camera light turns red and I've forgotten how to breathe. So begins my brief career as a Newsround presenter. My job is to interview animal expert Jerry, played by current presenter Martin Dugan, on how animal dung is heating buildings at Marwell Zoo. It's a past story and, in the spirit of live TV, Jerry will be a total nightmare. Wonderful. The experience starts well, microphone on, earpiece in. Friendly smiles everywhere. I just need to read lines on a screen. How hard can this be? We do a practice run. The auto cue is fast and I have to wait for the prompt cue in my ear before moving on. It's harder than you think. Round 2. This time the tape rolls and adrenaline courses through my body. "Hello," I bellow as floor manager Megan signals at my side. I'm enthusiastic but soon stumble. I call Zuzo and mix up UK for Ukraine. On to the interview. Jerry is a pain. He won't answer questions and pulls a furry giraffe toy over his head. I turn to stone. "Last question," studio director Craig says in my ear. Thank God, I think. The worst part is watching it back. I appear to be shouting. My left eyelid is involuntarily drooping. A weird effect of stress, it seems. Still, I'm pleased when editor Lewis James praises my performance. But not enough to consider a career change.